Is Barrell Batch 36 another home run? Let's find out. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So, if you ask me, Barrell Bourbon has been hitting a lot of home runs lately. They've definitely been on a roll, releasing some fantastic bourbons and whiskeys. And I was fortunate enough to have Barrell themselves send me out batch 36, their newest release, to review. So I've had a couple of previous batches that I've tasted, really enjoyed every single one of them. And it's phenomenal what they can do with just different blends to produce different awesome whiskeys. I'm hoping 36 lives up to that hype. Just again, real big shout out to Barrell for sending me this, very generous of them. And now I get to dive into it with you guys. So, in terms of stats on this particular bottle, it's cask strength, as pretty much everything Barrell does except for their foundation bottle. It's 114.44 proof. The blend here is a 9-year-old Kentucky bourbon, Indiana bourbons that are 7.5, 8, and 10 years old, and Tennessee bourbons that are 8 and 15 years old. And overall, the whole mash bill comes out to be 79% corn, 16% rye, and 5% malted barley. So pretty corn forward overall. I'm really excited to dive in. Again, I really do enjoy Barrell products. It's always fascinating to me how they can do so much, so many different components in the blend, and yet they tend to come together in a really cohesive way. Before we dive in, would love to just know in the comments below, what has your experience been with the Barrell batched bourbons in particular? Do you have a favorite batch? From what I understand, these have just been historically very, very good. Some are extra special though. Would love to know what you gravitate toward. All right, let's go in on the nose, palate, and finish and see how this one in particular drinks. Okay, so on the nose. Okay, dominant note, black cherry. And I love that note, so it's great. I mean, I love feeling that right at the front of the nose. Vanilla underneath that. Like a dark honey as well. Oak, for sure. Maybe a tiny bit of like orange peel. Yeah, and then there's something interesting. I can't quite put my finger on it. Whether it's like pear, apricot, something that's more in that tart fruit category. But overall, it's a very nice nose. There is proof to it. There is punch. Got a little twinge of ethanol going on, but powerful with the also flavor notes that come through, the aromas that come through, I should say. All right, let's go in on the palate, see how it tastes. Cheers. Interesting. So the spice and oak took over, maybe toward the front, really toward the mid palate, that was there. But then it faded into that black cherry, vanilla, dark honey sweetness. That was nice. I just was kind of taken by surprise with how much the oak came forward. Let's get a second sip though on our palate now, see if we can pick out some more layers to the flavors. Cheers. Okay, so the oak continues to be prominent here, which I don't mind, but it is tending a little bit more in that tannic direction. And then I got layered in that tart kind of fruitiness on this sip. So maybe it is like an apricot or plum, maybe even something in that direction on the palate. That black cherry and that vanilla is still there, but again, it's coming forward with more of the spice, more of the oak, a little bit of that dark honey. Really nice, very powerful whiskey. Definitely spicy, more of a cinnamon experience on the palate. But I'm looking for maybe a little bit more of that black cherry to come through it really comes through more on the back end of the palate, and I'm surprised by that, how much it's taken over by the oak in the mid palate and then fades into something sweeter. All right, let's go in for the third sip. I will think about the whole whiskey as a whole experience and then also really highlight the finish for you guys. Cheers. There it was. The black cherry came forward more, layered into that oak. So it doesn't go too tannic, if you ask me. I mean, it's borderline for me with the oak and the spice almost taking over too much, but there's just enough of that sweetness punch. Oh yeah, it's good. It's pulling it back. And then now it faded into a little bit more of that orange citrus note. There is an interesting experience. It's often rumored that the Tennessee whiskeys that go into barrel are from Dickel, and Dickel is notorious for having that kind of Flintstones vitamin note. I detect maybe just a little bit of that on the back end of this palate as well, but it is predominantly that oak, spice, black cherry experience. Kind of an interesting comparison here is Elijah Craig Barrel Proof C9 23. That is probably the most black cherry I've ever gotten on a bourbon. This doesn't have as much of the brown sugar notes that bourbon does, but it is pretty dang good. Yeah, and then the oak now is coming even more forward on the nose as I go back to it. A particularly oaky black cherry driven bourbon. So overall, what do I think? And the finish. Wanted to mention that the finish is on the longer end. It is probably more in that like medium long to long. Not the longest I've ever felt, but that oak helps it linger for a while, kind of cloys to your palate. And it's nice that the finish fades into something sweeter. So for me, overall, really like this. I'm a particular fan of black cherry, as I mentioned, so that's gonna be a note that draws me back to this particular batch. In terms of how it compares to other barrel products that I've had, it's definitely on par. I don't know if it's my favorite or how it would stack up. Might have to do a little comparing myself, but it's very, very good whiskey. Again, I would love to know in the comments, like if you've had batch 36 or other batches from Barrell, do any in particular stand out to you? I am very pleased with how this one has a profile that I really enjoy, but I do think it's a matter of finding the batch that has the profile that you enjoy the most. For 90 bucks, I think Barrell is consistently putting out some of the best non-allocated available stuff. Like, I know the $90 price point feels like it's up there a little bit. In the current market, it's not that crazy. And when you think about how this is just usually sitting on shelves, or does tend to sit on shelves more than all the allocated stuff people are hunting, it's very attractive at that $90 price point because you know you're getting really good whiskey. Thanks again to Barrell for sending out this bottle. It's one I'm gonna sip on and enjoy for quite a while here. All right, everybody, I think that's gonna do it. While I still have you, two favors to ask. One is hit the like button on this video. That's what helps get it out to the most people. And then if you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the channel for the rest of 2024 and beyond. Till I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey and cheers.